And we'll go with the screen share. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
This is apparently where we left off. And just to welcome those who may be watching this recording. So we started to discuss the various responsibilities of the three Levitical families. I had explained before how the tribe of Levi was divided into three families, Gershon, Kahat, and Levi. We had read about the Kohatites as we ended Bamidbar, last week's Sedra, and their responsibility was the sacred objects like the ark and the menorah, and we checked and saw that it was also the bronze or the copper altar outside. Those were their responsibilities to carry those things. And then we were talking about the Gershonites and what they had, and essentially they had to carry the boards of the tabernacle. That was their responsibility. And also that's what it is. Let me make sure. Yes. And also the hangings of that. Let's just make sure I've got the right thing. Yep. Right. Okay. I hope I got this right. Okay. B'nai Merari, well, let's finish this up, I guess. Zot avodat mishpachot b'nai hagershoni. This is the responsibility, the service of the families of the children of the Gershonites in regarding the tabernacle, ba'ohel mo'ed, umishmartam, and their service. Biad Itamar was under the supervision of Itamar ben Aharon HaKohen, son of Aaron the Kohen. Bnei Merari lemishpachotam, leveit avotam, tifkodatam, regarding the children of Merari, according to their families and their fathers, their paternal houses, tifkodatam, you shall count them. Miben Shloshim, and here we go. This is similar to the other groups. Shana Vamala, from 30 years old and upwards. Va'ad ben Chamishim Shana, up until 50 years. Tifkedem, you shall count for them. Kol Habala Tzava, all who enter service. La'avod et avodat ohel mo'ed, to serve the tent of meeting. Making sure. Vezot mishmeret masa'am. Okay, so I was mistaken. I'm sorry. Apparently, because the Karshei HaMishkan would be the boards. They had the boards. So my apologies. So the Gershonites had to do with the hangings and the cloth parts, whereas the Merarites had to do with the solid boards of the tabernacle. Okay, so Vizot Avot Mishmeret Masa'am. This is the watch of their porterage, right? In other words, this is what they were responsible for. The Chol Avodatam, regarding all their work, but Ohel Moed, regarding the tent of meeting, Karshei HaMishkan, the boards of the tabernacle. So you remember there were these boards, these solid boards that were quite high, and they were all sort of locked together when they assembled it. They fit together, and they represented you might say, the skeleton of the Mishkan, over which they would hang the curtains over these boards. So the boards, uvrichav, it's bars, meaning remember that one of the ways in which they locked the boards together was with a bar that went through on the outside. There were 4 bars on each side that were sort of pinned to it, and then there was this one bar that went through the center. They drilled a hole through the center of the board, and this bar went through them. For avudav, it's posts and its sockets for adonav. So there were also amudim, there were also columns. Remember, at the entrance of the tent of meeting, there were these columns, these solid columns, and also right in front of the part that would then demarcate the Holy of Holies, and they put curtains about these. Okay, so that's what we're referring to here. V'amudei hechatzer saviv, and also the columns of the courtyard around. So basically, they were responsible for these heavy, solid pieces that, in regarding the construction of the tabernacle. V'adnehem, and their sockets. Remember, those posts fit into a socket at the base. V'tedotam, their pins, umetrehem, and their cords, because they were set up so that they wouldn't fall down. They were locked in place through these, like with guy ropes for a tent, sort of that kind of idea. The chol kleihem, whatever all their utensils, ulochol avodah, because obviously it wasn't just these. They needed utensils to set these things up. So this was also their responsibility for all these particular elements of the tent of meeting, ulachol avodatam, and regarding all their service. Uveshemut tifkudu, and by name you shall count et klei mishmeret masaham, the utensils of that they carried and that they were responsible for. I think there's a Rashi for this. Here we go. One moment. V'tedotam umetrehem. So this is their pins and their cords. Shel amudim. He says they're talking about here the pins and the cords of the columns. Sharei yitdot umetre haklaim. Okay, so this has to do with the fact that there were also pins and cords for the cloth, right? For the cloths that were also part of the tabernacle, and this wasn't the responsibility of the Merarites. The Masa b'nei Gershon, that was the responsibility of the Gershonites. The Tedot umetrehem hayu, and indeed there were pins and there were cords, ropes, hayu, there were, lireot uleklaim, for the curtains and for the cloths, milamata, on the bottom, shelo tagbiham haruach, so that the wind wouldn't lift up from the bottom of where these things were hanging. So these pins and cords would keep them down and secure. V'tedot umetairim hayu la'amudim, and there were also pins and cords that for the posts, the columns, saviv, around, litlot bahem, in order to hang on them, on these columns, on these posts, haklaim, the cloths, bisfatam ha'elyonah, on their upper edge, from their upper edge, beklun sa'ot, or klunsot, with poles. So there was a horizontal pole on which they would hang these cloths, the kundasim, and shafts, kamoshish nuya b'malechet hamishkan, as is taught in the specific teaching, right, where they describe the actual construction of the tabernacle. So I apologize for my poor memory. Okay. Let's make sure we are in the right place. Here we go. Zot avodat mishpachot b'nei Merari. So this is the service of the families of the children of Merari, the Merarites. Lachol avodatam, regarding all their service, ba'ohel moed, in the tent of meeting, biyad Itamar, and this is under the authority of Itamar ben Aharon HaKohen, Itamar, son of Aaron the priest. And I believe, let's take a look.
No Rashi till 47.
Okay, that's because there's a lot of straightforward stuff, I hope. And I'm just looking at stuff here. Yeah, so Itamar, I just wanted to check. Itamar is in charge of the families of the Gershonites and the Merarites. So I want to go up, if you don't mind, bear with me, and let's see what it says about who's responsible for the Kohatites. So this just says Aaron and his sons. And they're the ones who are going to, because they needed more supervision because they were carrying the sacred objects. All right. Where are we here? Okay, right here. Vayivkod Moshe v'Aaron, and Moses and Aaron unisiei ha'edah, and also the princes of the community. In other words, the heads of each of the other tribes counted et bnei hakahati. They counted the children of Kahat, the mishpachotam ulevet avotam, according to their families and their paternal, according to the paternal line. Miben shloshim shana v'mala, from 30 years old and upwards, v'ad ben chamishim shana, up until the age of 50, kol haba letzava, all who would enter service, la'avodat ba'ohel moed, regarding the work in the tent of meeting. So now we have their numbers. Vayu pekudehem. This is now, remember, we'd had the count of 1 month up, but now we're counting the 30 years up to 50 years group. And their numbers, Vahiyuk Pekudehem Lemishpachotam, according to their families, Alpaim 2,750. I'm sorry, Golda?
Oh, I guess you can't see my hand when I'm waving.
No, I can't, because I'm looking at
416, responsibility shall rest with Eleazar for the Kohathites. Yeah.
Okay.
I marked it last time we were doing stuff, and I knew I'd seen it.
Well, I appreciate that. So that's
I think they have to go. The rest of the Aaron and his sons go and tell everybody what they're supposed to do. I think it says a little later on.
Well, it might have had some greater involvement, but basically, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Because I felt, so Itamar had 2 of the families, and Elazar had the 1 family of the Kohathites.
And that was the important
Which makes
stuff.
sense. Right. And that sort of makes sense.
And there was only the 2 of them after,
Correct. Right, because Nadav and Abihu had passed on.
Right.
Thank you. Thanks, Golda.
Okay. No problem.
This is teamwork, okay? All right. Thank you. So we just had 2,750 of the Kohatites to do service, the service that they did. A decent number of people to be working. Ela pekudei mishpachot hakahati. This is the number of the families of the Kohatites. Kol ha'oved ba'ohel moed. Everyone who was doing service in the tent of meeting, asher pakad Moshe v'Aharon, which Moses and Aaron counted, al pi Hashem, according to Hashem, right, by the mouth of Hashem, literally, biyad Moshe, through Moses. So God spoke to Moses, and then Moses told Aaron, and I think I'd read something about how Moses had invited the Nisi'im to actually come and help him count as well. That was something that Moses felt was appropriate to do. Next, Ufkudei, and so we get on to Bnei Gershon. Now we have the Gershonites, Lemishpachotam Ulevet Avotam, by their families and their paternal houses. Miben Shloshim Shana V'Mala. Notice how this is sort of like a formulaic listing of what's going on here. Miben Shloshim Shana V'Mala, from 30 years old and upwards. V'ad ben chamishim shana. You're going to learn a lot of Hebrew here, right? Vocab. Up until 50 years. Kol haba latzava, all who came to do service. La'avodah ba'ohel moed, to work in the tent of meeting. Vayihu, or for the tent of meeting. Vayihu pekudehem lemishpachotam leveit avotam, and their numbers according to their families and their paternal houses. Alpaim v'shesh ma'ot, 2,630. slightly smaller than the Kohathites. And then rounding this off, Ela Pekudei Mishpachot B'nei Gershon. This is the counting of the families of the sons of Gershon. Kol ha'over oved ba'ohel moed. All who did service in the tent of meeting, who did work in the tent of meeting. Asher pakad Moshe v'Aaron al pi Adonai. Notice this is just in terms of this is sort of done very legally or legalistically, and so there's this repetition of wording just to make sure that everything is kosher, right? So Kol ha'oved ba'ohel moed, asher pakad, which Moses and Aaron counted by God's mouth, according to God. Sorry, this is not moving up now. Okay. Oh, all right. Let's see if I can. Okay. For some reason, my. All right. We'll do it this way. Am I going too much?
You actually had it on the screen before, the whole verse.
All right. Okay.
And now you don't.
I don't know why it's going. Okay. It seems to be. Oh, there we go. So that's good.
Yes, there.
All right. Ufkudei. Interesting that it says Ufkudei mishpachot b'nei Merari. The wording's slightly different here, and the account of the numbers of the counting of the families of the children of the Merarites, the mishpachotam levet avotam, according to their families and their ancestral, their paternal homes. So there's a discussion as to why the language is a little bit different here. So if you want to go back, we'll look at. So this is how it just says, the account of the families of the Merarites. So there's a discussion as to why the language is slightly different. So let's go back and just to compare.
Well, it's more similar to the Gershonites.
Yes, it is. Okay.
And less similar
to the Kohathites.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's just, maybe it's at the end.
Whatever, but
yes, let's look at the end.
Well, Moses and Aaron are Kohathites, right? So maybe they wanted to make sure that was really done well and not.
And that's certainly one explanation. Okay, so look at, no, this is all.
I think it's Gershon that is the different one. It's hard to tell. It's just.
No, I thought it was the Merarites. And the reason, okay, so there is some.
Yeah.
And then.
So wait a second from there. Okay.
No, this is the opening sentence looks exactly the same, except the fact that it's a different family. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This is okay. This is Ele Pekuda. No, that's the way it ends.
Okay. All different to me. There's a VU Bakude him and Ele Bakude and Ufkude.
Yes.
There's a lot of
right. Yeah, but this is Ufkude here with B'nai Gershom, and this is Ufkude. Mishpachot B'nai Merari. So this says the families of Merari, and this does not say look at this. Ufkude Mishpachotam. So the wording is different. Okay, you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So the discussion is this: that the Gershonites, Gershon was the firstborn, Kahat was the secondborn, Merari was the thirdborn, and the Kohathites are counted first in this because of the sanctity of what they were carrying. And the wording for the Gershonites is similar, because they were firstborn. And so they didn't want to insult them. They wanted to give them some level of honor, the fact, especially since they were passed by, and normally it would have gone to the firstborn, and because it was going to the Kohathites, they wanted to give due to the Gershonites some honor, but they didn't have to do it with the Merarites, and that's at least a traditional interpretation of the different wording that goes on here, even though it's so similar. Okay, let's make sure we've got, right. Here are the Merarites. Here's where we start. Lemishchotam levet avotam. We translated that. Mibin shloshim shana v'mala, from 30 years old and up. V'ad ben chamishim shana, up until 50 years. Kol haba latzava lavodah ba'ol moed. All who came to do service and to work in the tent of meeting. Vayipekudehem, and their accounts, the mishpachotam, according to their families, shloshet alafim, 3,000. So they're the largest group, umatayim, and 200. So the Merarites were the largest number, and then we have the Kohathites, and then we have the Gershonites. Going on. Ela pekudei mishpachot b'nei Rari. Okay. Again, rounding this out, these are the accounts of the family of the children of Merari, Asher Pakad Moshe v'Aaron, which Aaron and Moses counted, Al Pi Adonai B'Yad Moshe. All pretty identical as best as I can tell. Going on now. Kol HaPekudim, the entire account, Asher Pakad Moshe v'Aaron, and look at this, we go back to Unasi'ei Yisrael, that Moses and Aaron and the heads of the tribes of Israel, that they counted the Levites, who counted the Levites, the Mishpachotam, according to their families and according to their paternal houses. Mibin shloshim shana. So this is going to be, of course, a total tally of those three groups from 30 years old and upwards, v'ad ben chamishim shana, until 50 years old. Kol haba la'avod avodat avodah v'avodat masa ba'ol moed. So there's going to be an interesting Rashi on this, right? So this, you can see there's a little bit of what appears to be a circumlocution, but it actually isn't. So from 30 years old and upwards, up until 50 years, all who came to do service and avodah, okay, to do service of work, right, to serve in that way, the avodat masa, and service of porterage, carrying, ba'ol moed, regarding the tent of meeting. So what is this avodah, right? Avodah. And that's what Rashi is going to talk about. Avodah. Here it is. Hu hashir, that refers to their singing. Bimtziltayim, I believe that is with timbrels, ukinorot, and harps, shehi avodah la'avodah acheret, because that is service to a different service. In other words, they would accompany the duties of the priest and the service of the priests with singing and with musical instruments. And here's where we have this, and of course the other responsibility is for avodat masa, and the responsibility of porterage, kamashma, or Rashi says, just as it implies. So they had these two basic responsibilities that are mentioned in the Torah that the Levites had to perform. It is 7:58. I think this is a good place to, let's finish this up. We'll get this finished. Vayu b'kudehem, and their account, shmonat alafim, 8,000, v'chamesh me'ot ushmonim, 580, their total. Nice number of people. Al pi Hashem, at the mouth of Hashem, Pakadotam b'yad Moshe, he counted them through Moses, ish, every individual man, al avodato, regarding his particular work, Al Masa'o, and what he had to carry. So this appears to be saying that each individual had their own particular responsibility. Ufkudav asher tziva Hashem et Moshe, and their account, or which God Hashem had commanded Moses. Here we go. Ufkudav asher tziva Hashem et Moshe. So he's saying that those elements of service, each individual service, hayu b'mitzvah, were done to fulfill a commandment. Mi ben shloshim shana va'ad ben chamishim. Okay, so I'm internalizing what's being said here. What Rashi appears to be saying is not so much the individual, but rather the mitzvah that God had given Moses was that they had to be from 30 years old up until 50 years old. And we will stop there. So I'm going to stop the share and stop the recording.